Kaiman Jai Shalal was not born General Grievous. He was born on Kalee, a harsh Outer Rim world where survival depended on strength and loyalty to one's tribe. Kaleesh society honored warriors who proved themselves in battle, and from an early age, Kaiman endured the hardships that defined his people. Combat was not an exception in Kaleesh life, it was its foundation. Shalal's world faced invasion from the Yamri. Republic intervention reshaped his view of the wider galaxy. After Kaleesh resistance pushed the Yamri back, the Galactic Senate sided with the colonizers and failed to address the devastation suffered by Kalee's population. Shalal didn't see the Republic as a neutral authority, but as a distant power that protected those with political influence. His later service with off-world interests and the sabotage that led to his reconstruction strengthened that belief. By the time he emerged as General Grievous, his war against the Republic was more than just a Separatist command assignment. It was the continuation of a grievance that had its roots in the destruction and neglect of his home world. Exploring both canon and Legends timelines, the story of General Grievous is a narrative of biological tragedy and mechanical evolution, documenting the transformation of a spiritual warrior from a desert world into the supreme commander of the Separatist Droid Army. Chapter 1: The Warrior of Kalee. Kalee existed far from the political and economic centers of the Galactic Republic, a desert-scarred Outer Rim world where isolation allowed its native civilization to develop without external governance. Kaiman Jai Shalal was born in a society that developed around survival in a hostile environment, where scarce resources and constant territorial pressure shaped a culture built on endurance, ritual, and warfare. Authority came from warriors who could defend their people and maintain control through strength and leadership. Kalee had no planetary capital that governed it. Tribal territory shifted with victory and defeat. Its leaders required constant demonstration of strength, ensuring warriors like Shalal gained influence through survival, tactical skill, and visible success. Within this structure, identity was inseparable from combat, and every generation inherited traditions that developed through conflict rather than diplomacy. Masks were central to Kaleesh identity, traditionally carved from the bones of native beasts. Legend sources describe Kaleesh war masks as stark and skeletal in design, and Shalal wore such a mask throughout his youth, a visual legacy later echoed by the mechanical visage of General Grievous. Bone mask traditions served as both a cultural uniform and a psychological tool on the battlefield. Masks allowed warriors to abandon personal identity during combat, becoming symbols of collective resistance. Enemies could not see individual emotion, only the unchanging face of a hostile warrior advancing without hesitation. This practice is deeply rooted in a society that lacked a centralized planetary government. Instead, Kalee functioned as a collection of independent tribes, each led by local warlords who directed territory, raids, and defense. Power remained distributed among shifting tribal alliances rather than a single ruler, and for generations, conflict was often defined by intertribal rivalry and local warfare. Within this tribal system, Shalal established his reputation as a master of the slug thrower. Kaleesh warriors favored projectile weapons, and Shalal was trained to use such arms from early childhood, carrying long-range rifles across the rugged terrain of his home world during the era of intertribal conflict. He was unaware that external pressures would soon shatter these boundaries and reshape his destiny through events that would bring the Kaleesh into the crosshairs of the wider galaxy. During the later years of the Galactic Republic, an insectoid species known as the Yamri launched an invasion on Kalee. Originating from the world of Hook, they descended on the planet in advanced starships, possessing military technology that the tribal Kaleesh could not match. The Yamri established colonies and military installations on Kalee, and their presence escalated into a planetary struggle later known as the Hook War. The Yamri's invasion extended beyond occupation. Colonial infrastructure extracted planetary resources and displaced native populations, transforming sections of Kalee into off-world controlled territory protected by superior weapons, hardened defensive positions, and orbital support. The occupation was defined by a huge technological imbalance between the two species. Yamri forces used modern blasters and off-world support to secure their settlements, but the Kaleesh resistance relied on traditional weapons and projectile slug throwers. Because the Kaleesh lacked comparable access to spacecraft at the start of the conflict, they were at a severe strategic disadvantage in carrying the war beyond their own surface. Kaimanjai Shalal entered this conflict at a young age, trained in the use of projectile weapons by his father. He fought the invaders while still very young and gained recognition as a skilled marksman before reaching adulthood. This early exposure to combat hardened him into a lethal warrior within his tribe. The war became his primary reality, shifting focus from internal tribal disputes to the survival of his species. Shalal's father was later killed fighting against the insectoid forces. Following the traditions of his people, the young warrior took his father's war mask. This mask became a permanent fixture of his identity, symbolizing loss and his commitment to continued resistance. He carried his father's legacy into battles that followed and became a symbol of Kaleesh defiance. The conflict that defined Shalal's youth would eventually push him to lead the resistance against it. The Kaleesh reorganized their resistance into a unified fighting force known as the Kolkrivas, replacing isolated tribal warbands with a single leadership. Resources were moved around in secret, and the Yamri weapons that were seized after battles were redistributed to raiding units. This structure allowed the Kaleesh to maintain their resistance efforts despite their limited industrial capacity. Shilal and Rondaru Liege Kumar, a Kaleesh war leader who became his closest military partner during the Hook War, were chosen to lead. Victory in battle became the only measure of a legitimate leader, which the pair of leaders consistently delivered. Under their guidance, the Kolkrivas did not try to match the invaders' military technology. Instead, they relied on adaptability. Amidst this, Shalal distributed weapons and supplies efficiently even though they were scarce. The Yamri's technological superiority provided advantages in open battle, but Shilal and Kumar's successful operations showed their people that the enemies were vulnerable. The Kaleesh's sustained resistance destroyed the Yamri's momentum. Their resistance expanded from isolated survival efforts into a coordinated effort to free their planet. However, victory on Kalee did not end the war. Kaleesh warriors used the Yamri vessels they captured to carry the conflict beyond their homeworld, but their victory on the ground quickly expanded the conflict into an interstellar counteroffensive. For the first time, Kaleesh warriors fought beyond their own skies, attempting to ensure the Yamri can never regroup and return. After suffering many losses, the Yamri stopped relying on their military strength alone and decided to seek protection through political channels. The Yamri were recognized as members of the Galactic Republic, so their representatives appealed directly to the Galactic Senate, presenting evidence of Kaleesh incursions into Republic-recognized territory. They testified that the conflict was unlawful aggression. Kalee had no representation in the Senate and lacked diplomatic standing within the Republic's political system. They passed the petition through their laws and did not consider the historical causes of the war. The judgment did not arrive as a single ship or a single battle. It arrived as a consequence of decisions that turned politics into enforcement. Republic officials reclassified Kaleesh raids as illegal incursions into protected space, which reframed the conflict as a security threat rather than a colonial war. Jedi involvement amplified the asymmetry. The Kolkrivas had been built to outlast an invader with superior weapons. It was not built to outmaneuver opponents who could read intent and disrupt coordination at the moment it mattered most. Once Republic enforcement became consistent, the Kaleesh lost the one advantage that had kept them alive: control of when and where combat happened. Shilal witnessed Republic authorities declare Kaleesh military actions illegal and authorize intervention to stop further attacks. The participation of the Jedi brought the counteroffensive to an abrupt end. Kaleesh fighters, already exhausted from decades of warfare, could not sustain operations against Republic forces that were supported by interstellar logistics and force-trained soldiers. Republic intervention ended Kaleesh expansion and restored Yamri security, while Jedi enforcement ensured compliance. The ruling reinforced Shalal's belief that political recognition determined justice more than the survival of native populations. Republic rulings also formally classified the Kaleesh as aggressors under Republic law. Trade sanctions came after. When shipping became risky, even neutral traders avoided Kaleesh space, not out of morality, but because Republic scrutiny made profit unpredictable. On the ground, the result was a slow, grinding emergency rather than a single catastrophe. Communities that had survived bombardment now face harvest failures, untreated infections, and supply rationing that never ended. For Shilal, it also created a new lesson. The Republic did not need to kill Kaleesh warriors in the field if it could starve the recovery afterward. Kalee's economy, already weakened by many years of invasion and resistance, fell further. Yamri political standing continued to give them privileges within Republic space. During this period of collapse, the partnership that had guided the resistance came to an end. Rondaru Leech Kumar, who had fought beside Shilal throughout the Hook War and commanded Kolkravis forces alongside him, was lost during the later stages of the conflict near the Genua Sea. She disappeared amidst the chaos of battle, got separated from Allied forces, and did not return. Kumar's death marked a permanent turning point in Shilal's life. The war had taken away Kalee's independence, its economic stability, and its future. Now it had taken the one figure who had stood beside him. In the years that followed, he had abandoned the name Kaiman Jai Shilal and became Grievous. Among the surviving Kaleesh, the name became associated with the warrior who had led the resistance and endured its destruction. The Republic had ended the Hook War, but it had also created the conditions that would shape one of the greatest menaces in its future. Chapter 2: Path to the Machine. The Intergalactic Banking Clan operated as one of the Republic's most powerful financial institutions, controlling vast credit reserves and enforcing debt agreements across thousands of star systems. Its authority extended beyond commerce into political and military influence, as entire governments depended on its loans. At its head stood Chairman Sandhill, a moon financier whose decisions could determine whether planets weakened by war recovered. The clan routinely monitored regions damaged by galactic conflict, identifying which ones were suitable for financial intervention. Sandhill became aware of Shilal through the warrior's reputation following the Hook War. Legend sources established that Shilal's role in the Kaleesh resistance drew attention in broader reaches of the galaxy. But as it stands, his home world is on the brink of ruin. However, Sandhill's interest wasn't exactly humanitarian. The banking clan needed military agents who can protect their financial assets and enforce agreements. Shilal's battlefield experience and leadership could serve those purposes. Sandhill knew the Kaleesh had no access to external resources without off-world support, which created the perfect situation to make a proposal. Also, the financier had other secret motives. Sandhill traveled to Kalee and met Shilal in person during the height of the planet's economic collapse. The moon financier did not address him as a defeated warlord, but as a successful commander down on his luck. The financier's offer was direct: financial assistance in exchange for Shilal's tactical services. Sandhill presented the contract as mutually beneficial. In reality, it was the foundation for dependency. Thinking of his people, Grievous accepted the offer. Refusal would have left Kalee to remain isolated and starving. Relief, even limited aid, was a desperate necessity. His decision tied his future to off-world powers, but it was the only immediate path to preserving what remained of the Kaleesh. Grievous's duties involved protecting banking clan assets and carrying out financial agreements. His assignments were rarely described as battles, but many became battles anyway. Banking clan convoys required escort through unstable routes. Seized cargo required retrieval from pirates and local militias. Debts were negotiated at the point where a governor's security detail realized the clan's enforcer would not leave empty-handed. That work taught Grievous a different kind of warfare than the Hook War. He learned how trade lanes functioned like arteries, how port authorities could be bribed or intimidated, and how a small force could control a region by targeting logistics rather than occupying ground. He also learned how droids change conflict. Units that did not panic, did not fatigue, and could be thrown away without political cost. Those lessons did not make him less Kaleesh, they gave his Kaleesh instincts a galactic scale. In time, his services as an enforcer gave him deeper insights into interstellar military operations and political structures in the galaxy. His experience also taught him to manage forces across multiple star systems. preparing him for future large-scale command roles. The banking clan exposed him to the use of mechanized forces, introducing him to the growing role of droids in large-scale war. In spite of everything, Grievous's loyalty to Sandhill was transactional. He did not leave Kalee behind when he entered the banking clan's service. His departure was an extension of the same war he had already fought. Every contract he fulfilled and every battle he entered existed under the shadow of the Republic's punishment of his people. The famine on Kalee had forced him into service, and the memory of that suffering stayed inseparable from his purpose. His war had expanded beyond a single world, but it had never stopped being about Kalee. Grievous's reputation as a Kaleesh war leader endured long after the Hook War concluded. Such status made him a figure of political significance, drawing the attention of powerful forces who looked toward an upcoming galactic conflict. His continued influence over the Kaleesh tribes and his refusal to remain a passive observer of their suffering made him a primary target for manipulation. The Republic and the Yamri viewed his existence as a persistent threat to the post-war state of affairs, as he now possessed off-world military experience and an intensified resentment toward the Senate's double standards. To his people, he remained a symbol of defiance. The bone mask he wore was no longer just a family heirloom, but a testament to a species that refused to be silenced by economic or military pressure. More importantly, he drew the attention of Count Dooku. In truth, Sandhill had been acting in coordination with Count Dooku. Both already recognized Grievous's tactical ability and the symbolic importance, and handpicked him as a candidate for transformation into a cybernetic commander for the Separatist cause. Dooku viewed the warlord as a valuable future asset and hatched a plan to destroy his body while preserving his mind for cybernetic reconstruction. During the period that Grievous worked as the banking clan's enforcer and military operative, Sandhill maintained direct contact with him as both his employer and political handler. It was Sandhill who one day provided Grievous a shuttle under the authority of the banking clan, presenting the transport as a routine assignment rather than a special arrangement. The vessel appeared identical to other corporate transports used throughout banking clan space, equipped for single-pilot travel and capable of inter-system navigation without escort. Grievous boarded it without suspicion. He had already spent years in service of his financial benefactors, protecting banking clan assets and enforcing their interests across Outer Rim trade routes. Nothing in the shuttle's preparation suggested that it had been altered for any purpose beyond transportation. Internally, however, the craft had been modified under Count Dooku's direction. An explosive device had been installed deep within the ship's structural systems, concealed beyond any location accessible to routine inspection. The shuttle departed normally and entered atmospheric descent over Kalee. As it approached the region surrounding the Genoa Sea, the sabotage device detonated inside the vessel's internal framework. The explosion disrupted stabilizers and cut flight control systems, taking away the pilot's ability to correct directions or regain control during descent. Internal systems failed in rapid succession, and the shuttle began to fall. Grievous remained inside the cockpit as the vessel lost altitude. The ship's external surfaces fractured under stress, and the hull began tearing apart against atmospheric pressure. From that point forward, survival depended entirely on whether any portion of his body could endure the crash. The shuttle struck the waters of the Genoa Sea with catastrophic force. Grievous's limbs were either crushed or severed by broken durasteel. The destruction left only portions of his organic system intact. His brain, eyes, and selected internal organs survived the crash despite widespread physical damage. Almost immediately, recovery forces arrived under Count Dooku's authority. These teams had been prepared in advance and deployed as soon as the sabotage device activated. Their presence ensured that the outcome of the crash remained under Separatist control rather than subject to chance discovery. Medical droids extracted Grievous's remains from the wreckage with precise focus on preserving these surviving biological structures. The recovery process prioritized neural tissues and vital organs capable of sustaining future integration into artificial systems. His destroyed limbs and skeletal remains were abandoned as unrecoverable. Transport from Kalee occurred under strict security. Recovery teams transferred Grievous's preserved biological components into a medical transport vessel equipped for hyperspace travel. This ship functioned as a mobile surgical environment, maintaining continuous life support regulation while traveling towards Separatist controlled territory. Count Dooku oversaw the operation remotely to confirm that recovery and transport proceeded according to plan. His intention had never been assassination alone. The objective required survival of enough biological structure to permit cybernetic reconstruction. Complete death would have eliminated the possibility of transforming Grievous into a cybernetic commander. Chapter 3: Birth of a Weapon. Grievous was taken to a destination that lay within Separatist control space, where Geonosian surgical facilities had been prepared to receive him. These laboratories possessed the technological capability required to integrate organic neural tissue into mechanical frameworks. The surgical integration of Kaiman Jai Shalal into his cybernetic shell required the preservation of his surviving brain and vital organs and their replacement within a mechanical framework capable of sustaining life. Geonosian surgeons integrated his surviving organic brain and vital tissues into a cybernetic chassis, creating a working link between his mind and a mechanical body. The procedure focused on keeping him alive and restoring motor control inside a frame designed for combat. Mechanical systems assume functions that his remains could no longer perform, including circulation support and breathing through external life support components embedded within the armor. Legends accounts describe the surgeons using specialized biological and medical resources to stabilize what remained of his organs during integration. Support meant to keep the living tissue viable long enough for the machine to carry it. Slowly, his consciousness returned. Grievous's Kaleesh eyes opened to an environment defined by artificial light, unfamiliar sensory input, and the constant mechanical regulation required to keep him alive. His movements did not come naturally at first, as the connection between thought and mechanical motion required calibration and training. When his reconstructed body stabilized, General Grievous entered a period of physical calibration and operational training under Geonosian supervision. His preserved brain controlled mechanical limbs through cybernetic interfaces. But in order to achieve coordination in his movement, extensive adjustments were required. His early attempts were unstable because the organic brain that had once controlled muscle and bone now struggled to direct mechanical limbs that responded differently. Early exercises focused on balance, control motion, and adapting combat instincts to what his cybernetic frame was capable of. Count Dooku assumed direct control over Grievous's recovery and development following the reconstruction. The Count recognized that the Kaleesh warlord's tactical brilliance had survived the destruction of his body. Dooku didn't need to question his new creation's loyalty. Grievous required specialized maintenance and replacement components unavailable outside Separatist control, binding his continued survival to the political and military structure that rebuilt him. Dooku introduced Grievous to lightsaber combat, training him personally despite Grievous lacking sensitivity to the Force. Without the Force, Grievous relied on physical speed, mechanical strength, and learned technique rather than precognition. Dooku trained him in principles that emphasized precision, timing, and controlled strikes. Grievous learned to compensate for his lack of force awareness through relentless practice and mechanical endurance. The reconstruction had given Grievous the ability to separate his forearms into 4 independent limbs, allowing him to wield multiple lightsabers. This capability enabled combat patterns impossible for biological duelists. Grievous developed a unique fighting style built around overwhelming offensive pressure. His mechanical structure also allowed him to maneuver in ways organic beings could not easily replicate. He incorporated climbing, sudden directional shifts, and unconventional movement into combat. These abilities made him unpredictable even to experienced Jedi Knights. Through sustained training, Grievous transformed into a specialized Jedi hunter. In the Legends comics Visionaries: Eyes of the Rebellion, Count Dooku subjected Grievous to repeated combat trials designed to refine his new mechanical body into a weapon. Training did not rely on theory alone. Dooku forced him to fight Magna Guards and battle droids in controlled combat environments, evaluating how quickly he could adapt to artificial limbs and mechanical balance. These exercises pushed Grievous to replace instinctive organic reactions with deliberate mechanical accuracy. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Dooku also trained Grievous personally in lightsaber combat, demonstrating how Jedi relied on discipline, defensive positioning, and force awareness. Grievous studied their habits and learned to exploit moments when Jedi expected predictable movement, turning him into a weapon capable of confronting Jedi directly in battle. Grievous's mechanical body amplified his mind's effectiveness. The combination of Kaleesh battlefield experience and cybernetic strength created a commander capable of leading large-scale military operations while personally engaging elite opponents. In addition, Dooku's mentorship extended beyond physical training into psychological conditioning, reinforcing Grievous's resentment towards the Republic and Jedi. Dooku painted them as the ones responsible for the suffering of the Kaleesh and the circumstances that led to the destruction of his body. Training expanded to include battlefield command simulations and coordination with droid forces. In those conditions, Grievous demonstrated an ability to direct mechanized armies effectively, applying tactics developed during the Hook War to a much larger scale. By the conclusion of this period, Grievous had become a fully operational military commander within the Separatist hierarchy. Grievous did not immediately assume control of Separatist armies. His reconstructed body was first evaluated through field assignments under controlled conditions. Separatist leaders sent Grievous against isolated security detachments, pirate groups interfering with Separatist shipping, and small Republic-aligned garrisons where the risk of losing him or exposing their new asset to Republic scrutiny remained low. In the Legends comic General Grievous from 2005, Grievous's early operations showed how he effectively combined his personal combat style with his mechanized body. He advanced at the front of droid units rather than remaining behind them, demonstrating exceptional speed and mechanical strength in breaking defensive lines and subduing resistance forces. Indeed, his Kaleesh battlefield instincts had survived reconstruction. Hauntingly, these operations started his collection of lightsabers from fallen Jedi. He studied their use not as ceremonial weapons, but as practical tools of war. He integrated each saber he seized into his training, refining his techniques and further developing his combat skills in the field. Darth Sidious and Count Dooku recognized that the Kaleesh commander's survival and combat performance validated their decision to preserve his mind within a cybernetic shell. Chapter 4: Terror of the Clone Wars. Before his existence became known to the wider Republic military, General Grievous operated deliberately outside public awareness. Separatist High Command restricted knowledge of their new commander, while the Confederacy consolidated its military infrastructure. Droid production expanded on Geonosis and other industrial worlds, and fleet construction accelerated across Separatist-aligned systems. During this period, Grievous participated in planning and coordination rather than public battlefield command. His introduction was intended to have strategic and psychological impact. The Confederacy would reveal a commander capable of defeating Jedi directly, undermining one of the Republic's greatest military advantages. That moment came in the world of Hypori. The Battle of Hypori was General Grievous's first confirmed large-scale confrontation with Republic forces. A Republic task force consisting of Acclamator-class assault ships carrying clone troopers and Jedi commanders entered the system to challenge Separatist activity on the planet. Separatist warships and defense forces intercepted the formation in orbit, heavily damaging multiple Republic vessels and forcing surviving transports into uncontrolled descents towards the surface. Losing control in orbit forced the Republic survivors into uncontrolled entry in the atmosphere. Several ships crashed, units that scattered across Hypori's desert surface. It isolates Jedi commanders from the support of their fleet and creates conditions favorable for Separatist troops to eliminate them on the ground. Clone troopers and Jedi regroup within the wreckage, using shattered hulls and fallen walkers as defensive cover. Long-range communicators were compromised, preventing immediate withdrawal or reinforcement. Separatist battle droids advanced across debris fields, encircling the crash sites and restricting movement beyond the wreckage. Separatist Command deployed General Grievous to eliminate the surviving Jedi and complete the destruction of the isolated strike force. In the Legends animated microseries Star Wars Clone Wars, Jedi Masters Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shakti, El Secura, Kakruk, Tarsair, and the Padawan Shah-Gi prepared defensive positions inside a downed transport while attempting to restore communications. Grievous approached by climbing across the exterior hull using the articulated claws of his cybernetic limbs. His mechanical frame allowed movement across vertical and inverted surfaces without loss of balance. The Jedi sensed his presence through the Force before visual confirmation. He observed their defensive arrangement before initiating direct attack. Soon after, Grievous entered the wreckage and ignited multiple lightsabers, including weapons taken from Jedi he defeated during the battle. His attack relied on rapid advance, mechanical strength, and unconventional angles created by his multi-limb construction. Jedi defensive formations collapsed under sustained pressure. Padawan Shagi and Jedi Master Tarsair were killed during the confrontation, and Grievous pursued the remaining Jedi through the wreckage, forcing them into retreat across the battlefield while Separatist droid forces maintained the encirclement. His ability to defeat Jedi in direct combat confirmed the effectiveness of the cybernetic reconstruction overseen by Count Dooku. Grievous collected the lightsabers of fallen Jedi following the battle. These weapons became permanent elements of his equipment. He stored them within magnetic clamps integrated into his armor. Each weapon represented a confirmed kill, reinforcing his reputation among Republic forces as an adversary capable of defeating Jedi directly. Reports of a Separatist commander wielding captured Jedi weapons spread rapidly through Republic military channels. His success established him as the Confederacy's primary battlefield commander. The Confederacy used him as more than a commander. He created a secondary effect that mattered almost as much as victories. His raids were chosen for what they did to morale. A mission that was expected to be routine and uneventful would instead find a predator. Republic units began acting as if he might arrive anywhere, which forced them to slow down, travel in heavier formations, and waste time securing routes that had previously been routine. Following Hypori, one of the most significant assets placed under Grievous's authority was the Subjugator-class heavy cruiser Malevolence. In the canon animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the vessel carried a large-scale ion cannon capable of disabling multiple capital ships at once. Republic ships struck by the weapon became immobilized in seconds and couldn't defend themselves from ensuing attacks. Republic reconnaissance initially failed to identify the source of the attacks. Clone pilots encountered debris with no visible hull penetration. Survivors reported complete electrical shutdown moments before Separatist starfighters arrived. These accounts confirmed that a new type of fleet-level weapon had entered the war. Eventually, Republic intelligence determined that the attacks originated from a single heavily armed cruiser operating along major hyperspace corridors. Grievous commanded for mobile warships, leaving immediately after an operation was finished. His pattern prevented Republic fleets from knowing where to intercept him. He also favored striking locations that would normally be deemed secure, like yards, communication relays, and supply depots frequently. These tactical choices forced the Republic to adjust logistics, which slowed their momentum more effectively than trying to hold contested territory. The Supreme Chancellor also led boarding operations into Republic warships, seizing navigational data and military codes. He captured personnel with operational knowledge of Republic deployments and eliminated the rest that he couldn't use. In the canon animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars, his presence during boarding assaults showed that he was not just directing droids from a distance. He advanced alongside commando units, targeting officers and Jedi, rather than engaging in prolonged firefights with clone infantry. This method reflected lessons Grievous had learned long before the Clone Wars. On Kalee, survival depended on striking decisively and disappearing before superior forces could respond. As Supreme Commander, he applied the same principle across interstellar distances. Hyperspace travel replaced desert terrain as his avenue of escape, allowing him to vanish from one battlefield and appear in another before Republic forces understood where he had gone. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Jedi investigators encountered repeated evidence of his deliberate focus on communication centers and command infrastructure. Destroying these locations isolated Republic forces, forcing Jedi to divide their attention between combat and restoring operational control. Each delay created opportunities for additional Separatist offensives elsewhere. Grievous also understood the psychological dimension of warfare. He carried his lightsaber collection into battles. He knew they were symbols that represented a Jedi who had been unable to defeat him, which struck fear or despair. Republic clone troopers reacted differently to his presence than to ordinary droid commanders. Droids followed predictable behavioral patterns. advancing or retreating according to program logic. Grievous did not. He changed direction without warning, attacked from unexpected angles, and disengaged without hesitation once his objective was complete. Republic Command increased convoy escorts and reassigned Jedi in groups after repeated losses to Grievous's attacks. Despite these measures, Grievous continued to evade capture or succumb to defeat. Separatist fleets maintained multiple fallback positions across friendly territory, allowing him to withdraw to secure locations for repair and redeployment. Droid forces could continue executing standing orders, even if temporarily cut off from direct communication. This decentralized structure ensured that Republic victories against individual Separatist units did not automatically break wider operations. The Jedi Council assigned Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to locate and destroy the vessel. Republic intelligence identified its movement patterns and launched reconnaissance missions to track its position. Skywalker led a starfighter assault that successfully damaged the ion cannon, preventing immediate reuse of the weapon. Republic forces located the cruiser near the Abregato system. Skywalker led a small strike team inside the vessel, while Republic naval forces attacked externally. Internal sabotage damaged propulsion and weapon systems, while external attacks weakened the cruiser's defensive capability. Grievous ordered evacuation once structural damage prevented escape. He departed aboard an escape craft as Republic forces continued their assault. The cruiser was destroyed after colliding with a nearby moon, eliminating the ion superweapon. After the Malevolence was destroyed, Grievous continued commanding Separatist fleets from mobile warships while directing ongoing attacks across Republic territory. In the Legends animated microseries Star Wars Clone Wars, Republic forces encountered the consequences of these campaigns as devastated battlefields and abandoned defensive positions accumulated across the Outer Rim. Survivors reported that the Separatist commander moved unpredictably, appearing without warning before withdrawing just as quickly. Jedi investigators found evidence of destroyed clone detachments and recovered lightsabers taken from fallen Jedi, confirming that Grievous personally participated in combat rather than remaining exclusively in remote command. Jedi Council discussions increasingly focused on Grievous as an individual threat rather than simply the leader of droid armies. His ability to defeat Jedi in direct combat distinguished him from other Separatist commanders. Republic intelligence could track fleet movements, but locating Grievous himself proved far more difficult. Each failed attempt to intercept him allowed additional Separatist offensives to proceed without disruption. In the canon animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars, Republic commanders began altering their deployment patterns specifically to avoid isolation when Grievous was present. Jedi were reassigned in pairs or larger formations, and fleet commanders delayed planetary landings until reconnaissance confirmed his absence. His ability to appear unexpectedly and kill Jedi in close combat forced the Republic to treat his presence as a strategic threat rather than a conventional battlefield variable. Grievous conducted rapid strikes against Republic installations, appearing long enough to destroy infrastructure or eliminate command personnel before withdrawing. His reliance on mobility allowed him to avoid prolonged engagements that favored Republic reinforcement capability. Separatist fleets often withdrew immediately after objectives were completed, preserving command leadership while forcing the Republic to commit resources to defensive response across multiple sectors. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Grievous directed campaigns targeting Republic communication centers and supply depots, weakening the Republic's ability to coordinate Outer Rim defenses. These attacks forced the Jedi Council to divert experienced commanders away from major fronts, slowing Republic advances and preserving Separatist territorial control during the later stages of the war. Grievous established fortified command locations to oversee military operations while reducing exposure to Republic assault. One such installation existed in the remote world of Vasek. The fortress contained battle droid garrisons, internal defenses, and secure chambers used for command and storage. The site also held lightsabers taken from Jedi he had killed. Republic forces traced Separatist activity to General Grievous's lair on the third moon of Vasek. Jedi Master Kit Fisto, accompanied by his former Padawan Nadar Veb and clone troopers, pursued the trail into the trap-filled fortress. Count Dooku had effectively turned the confrontation into a test, leading the Jedi there so Grievous could prove himself after recent failures. Separatist defenses slowed the advance through defensive corridors and automated weapon systems. Grievous remained inside the fortress and confronted Nadar Veb after the Jedi advanced ahead of supporting forces. The confrontation ended with Grievous killing Nadar Veb using superior mechanical strength and multi-saber combat technique. Kit Fisto attempted pursuit, but was unable to prevent his escape. Grievous evacuated using prepared escape routes and departed the planet before Republic forces secured the installation. Grievous's mobility allowed him to avoid capture across numerous Republic operations. One of the few successful captures occurred during Separatist activity on Naboo. The Gungan Grand Army under Boss Lyoni and Captain Tarpals deployed electropole weapons and energy binders capable of restraining his mechanical frame. Energy binders immobilized his limbs, while electrical charges interfered with motor function. The Gungan Grand Army succeeded in trapping Grievous during the Naboo campaign after Jar Jar Binks, standing in for the injured Boss Lyoni, rallied them against the Separatist invasion. Their victory briefly secured Grievous as a prisoner before Separatist forces later recovered him. Separatist forces under Count Dooku launched a recovery operation shortly afterward. They succeeded in extracting him before Republic authorities could transfer him off-world or conduct extended interrogation. Grievous returned to Separatist command and continued directing droid army operations across multiple star systems, and carried out orders of escalating brutality. Grievous resumed command immediately after his recovery, directing fleet actions intended to slow Republic advances into Separatist-held territory. Droid armies continued attacking infrastructure rather than attempting to hold every captured system, destroying shipyards, supply depots, and hyperspace relay stations that supported Republic logistics. These operations prolonged the conflict even as Separatist political leaders became increasingly isolated. Republic commanders adjusted their expectations when confronting him. Jedi task forces began prioritizing intelligence gathering before committing ground forces, recognizing that Grievous often targeted command personnel directly. His presence forced Republic fleets to remain alert even in systems that had not reported large Separatist concentrations, since his command ships could arrive unexpectedly through hyperspace. In several engagements depicted in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Grievous led boarding operations against Republic cruisers, using droid forces to overwhelm clone troopers and seize prisoners or intelligence. These attacks demonstrated that Separatist strategy relied not only on numerical superiority, but also on removing experienced officers and disrupting Republic coordination. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Republic intelligence identified Grievous as the central figure maintaining Separatist military cohesion following repeated territorial losses. His continued survival allowed droid forces across widely separated sectors to act under unified strategic direction rather than fragment into isolated corporate armies. His reputation continued spreading among Jedi survivors. Reports described a commander who did not rely solely on droid numbers, but who entered combat personally when necessary, using speed and mechanical strength to overwhelm individual Jedi. His survival through repeated encounters reinforced his status as the Confederacy's most dangerous battlefield leader. By the later stages of the war, eliminating General Grievous had become a priority equal to defeating Separatist fleets. Chapter 5: The Witch and the Executioner. Count Dooku faced an unexpected challenge originating from his former apprentice, Asajj Ventress. Acting under orders from Darth Sidious, Dooku had attempted to eliminate Ventress after her growing strength drew unwanted attention. Ventress survived and fled to Dathomir, where she returned to the Night Sisters and resumed her allegiance to Mother Talzin. Talzin restored Ventress through Night Sister magic and began acting openly against Sith interests, including orchestrating an assassination attempt against Dooku and overseeing the transformation of Savage Opress into a powerful dark side warrior. These actions demonstrated that Talzin retained both the power and the intent to interfere with Sith plans. Sidious ordered Dooku to remove Talzin and destroy the Night Sisters as an organized force. Talzin possessed deep knowledge of Sith practices and commanded a population capable of producing Force-sensitive fighters outside Sith control. Allowing that faction to remain intact risked the emergence of rival agents beyond the Sith hierarchy. Dooku accepted the order and prepared a military solution rather than another covert attempt on Talzin's life. Night Sister society existed in fortified clan settlements and included trained warriors capable of direct combat alongside magic-based defense. Eliminating them required overwhelming force applied across their home world. In a calculated move, Dooku assigned General Grievous to command the invasion. The assignment placed the Supreme Commander at the center of one of the war's most destructive operations, one aimed not at capturing territory, but at eliminating an entire force-using society. The Separatist invasion of Dathomir commenced with a massive orbital deployment of Lucrehulk-class landing craft, discharging waves of battle droids and armored assault tanks into the Scarlet Swamps. Dathomir did not possess a planetary shield, so the Night Sisters' initial resistance was dependent on concealment and their familiarity with the planet's terrain. Night Sister assassins struck advancing droid units from cover and withdrew before sustained counterfire could reach them. Force density limited long-range firing lines, forcing droid formations into closer approach before identifying targets. Night Sister magic further complicated the advance. Illusions distorted visual targeting, and concealment techniques masked movement through vegetation and rock formations. Several droid units were destroyed before achieving stable firing positions, slowing the Separatist advance during the opening stage of the invasion. General Grievous responded by expanding the assault front and deploying commando droids ahead of heavier formations. Smaller units moved between tree cover and rock formations, clearing the hidden defenders and protecting heavier infantry moving behind them. Droid formations advanced through multiple routes rather than a single concentrated line, reducing vulnerability to localized ambush. The assault continued forward despite losses, and Separatist forces established firing positions closer to the Night Sister settlement. The battle droids moved systematically through the fog, ignoring the environmental hazards as their thermal sensors tracked the heat signatures of the retreating sisters. While the sisters fought on the front lines, Mother Talzin retreated to a hidden inner sanctum to wage a metaphysical war. Using a lock of Count Dooku's hair, she began a dark side voodoo ritual, heating a wax effigy to inflict excruciating physical pain on the Count in his palace on Sereno. Her goal was to force Dooku to call off the attack by holding his life hostage. To buy herself time while also aiding the Night Sister army in the battle outside, she commanded the elder Old Daka to perform the chant of resurrection, awakening the army of the dead, which are mummified Night Sisters stored in hanging pods to bolster their thinning ranks. Old Daka struck a massive gong within the cavern, and the green mist of the chant of resurrection flowed upward into the trees to reanimate the long-dead ancestors. These reanimated fighters delayed the advance in several areas, forcing concentrated weapons fire to destroy them again. The zombies, unaffected by pain or standard blaster wounds, swarmed droid platoons, pulling the machines apart with their bare hands. Droid units continued clearing settlement structures, eliminating living defenders, and securing ground positions. But the sudden influx of undead warriors stalled the mechanized momentum. As the droids were dismantled, the zombie warriors ignored heavy blaster fire that would have incapacitated any living defender, continuing their relentless assault on the Separatist forces. Grievous entered the battlefield during the middle stage of the assault, reinforcing advancing units and accelerating the push towards the settlement center. He did not remain exclusively behind advancing droid lines. He entered the Night Sister settlement personally, cutting through defending warriors, while droid infantry secured surrounding structures. As the droid army faltered against the undead, Asajj Ventress emerged to confront the invading force. Ventress, seeking redemption and a home among her sisters, challenged Grievous to formal single combat. She proposed a bargain. If she defeated him, the Separatist army must leave Dathomir. Grievous, fueled by arrogance, accepted. The duel unfolded within the burning settlement as droid forces stood down to watch. Grievous ignited 4 lightsabers, utilizing his multi-limb fighting technique. However, Ventress relied on superior agility and her deep connection to the planet's dark side energy. She moved with a fluidity that parried the general's mechanical strikes, redirecting his momentum and carving through his defense. In a decisive moment, Ventress managed to sever one of Grievous's arms and pinned him to the ground, the tip of her blade at his throat. She held her position for a moment, waiting for him to yield as the surrounding droids observed the conclusion of the ritualized challenge. and Grievous, displaying his lack of honor, refused to concede. He commanded his surrounding droids to open fire. A blast struck Ventress in the shoulder, knocking her back. The Separatist army immediately resumed its slaughter. Wounded and overwhelmed, Ventress was forced to flee into the surrounding wilderness as the droid army moved to complete the genocide. She retreated into the trees, while the Separatist tanks resumed their bombardment of the village, effectively ending any chance for a regrouped defense. Simultaneously, the tide turned in the Hidden Sanctum. Just as Mother Talzin's ritual brought Count Dooku to the brink of death, Dooku managed to contact Grievous via hologram, ordering him to stop the witch at any cost. Grievous followed the trail of green magical mist to the cave's entrance. He breached the inner chamber and struck down old Daka with his lightsaber, instantly severing the spell of resurrection. The zombie army collapsed into dust. Without their undead reinforcements, the remaining living Night Sisters were massacred by the overwhelming droid numbers. Grievous stood over the altar as the green light in the cavern faded, marking the end of the supernatural intervention that had stalled his droids. Mother Talzin, realizing the ritual was broken and Daka was dead, vanished from the sanctum before Grievous could get to her location. Separatist forces exploited the disruption immediately. Droid infantry entered defensive positions previously protected by Night Sister magic, and heavy weapons units established firing zones covering major escape routes. The mechanized advance continued without interruption. Grievous maintained forward momentum throughout the operation. His command presence ensured that droid forces did not pause after initial resistance broke, preventing defenders from reorganizing or mounting counterattacks. The settlement fell under full Separatist control soon afterward. As casualties mounted, the full scale of the devastation became clear. The settlement was reduced to burning ruins, and the hanging pods of the ancestors were scorched to ash. Night Sister fighters who survived the initial advance were hunted through the force. The organized community that had existed on Dathomir ceased to function as a unified military force. The defoliator tanks and standard artillery continued to fire until the village structures were leveled and the surrounding forest was cleared of any visible resistance. Talzin's power base had been destroyed and her followers had been killed or scattered. Night Sister society continued only through scattered survivors rather than a centralized clan. The massacre was total, leaving the planet a graveyard of a once powerful culture. The remaining droids conducted a final sweep of the ruins, ensuring that no living being remained within the perimeter of the former stronghold. For Grievous, the campaign reinforced his role as the instrument through which Dooku enforced Sith authority across the war. His command of the invasion demonstrated the Confederacy's ability to eliminate Force-using opponents through mechanized force alone. The destruction of the Night Sisters removed an independent faction capable of interfering with Sith plans and strengthened Separatist control over the conflict's strategic direction. By the later phase of the Clone Wars, General Grievous confronted a new opponent outside the Republic command structure, Darth Maul. Darth Maul returned to galactic affairs after surviving his defeat on Naboo and restoring his physical strength with cybernetics and Night Sister magic. After the siege of Dathomir, Maul recovered on the planet under the care of his mother, Mother Talzin. She used her healing magic to restore his sanity and build him cybernetic legs. Maul began rebuilding his power with his brother Savage Opress. He did not seek reintegration with the Sith, he created his own war machine. Maul unified multiple criminal syndicates into a single structure called the Shadow Collective. Death Watch provided armored Mandalorian infantry, while Black Sun and the Pike Syndicate supplied fleets, credits, and hyperspace access. Maul used those resources to seize Mandalore, killing Pre Vizsla and taking control of the planet. Mandalore became his fortified command center, protected by Mandalorian troops and Syndicate fleets. Separatist leadership cannot ignore the emergence of an independent military power controlling hyperspace routes and fortified territory. Count Dooku retained political authority over the Confederacy, and Grievous remained responsible for directing its droid armies. Any rival force capable of intercepting supply routes or recruiting planetary governments threatened Separatist mobility. Droid fleets began probing Shadow Collective territory, while reconnaissance units searched for Mandalorian bases. Actually, Maul did not intend to fight a prolonged war against droid production capacity. He focused on leadership. In the canon comic series Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, Maul arranged an ambush targeting Count Dooku and General Grievous directly. Mandalorian commandos and Shadow Collective forces isolated Separatist leaders during a fleet movement, while Mandalorian fighters disabled escort units and boarded Separatist command vessels. Maul confronted Dooku personally and defeated him in lightsaber combat, taking him alive. Mandalorian commandos secured Grievous using specialized restraints designed to immobilize mechanical limbs. Grievous could destroy individual attackers, but he could not fight an entire Mandalorian boarding force while cut off from droid reinforcements. Shadow Collective forces transported both prisoners to Mandalore under heavy guard. Grievous's temporary removal from the field disrupted Separatist command at a critical moment. Even so, the wider conflict was never simply about imprisoning one general. Maul intended to use captured Separatist leadership to force the hidden Sith powers behind the war into open confrontation. Maul held both prisoners as leverage. He intended to force Darth Sidious into open confrontation. Killing Grievous would damage the Separatists, but holding him alive forced the Sith to respond personally. Soon afterward, Darth Sidious arrived in Mandalore. In the animated series, Sidious penetrated Mandalorian defenses and confronted Maul and Savage Opress directly. Sidious killed Savage during the duel and defeated Maul, taking him prisoner. In the comics, Separatist forces recovered Dooku and Grievous during the operation and evacuated them from Mandalore. Grievous returned immediately to command the Separatist military. His capture had interrupted Confederacy coordination, but had not destroyed its war machine. Droid armies resumed full deployment under his authority. Mother Talzin continued resisting Sith control after Maul's capture. In the canon comic series Son of Dathomir, Sidious and Dooku launched an operation to destroy her permanently. Grievous commanded the droid forces assigned to contain her physical manifestation. Battle droids secured the surrounding battlefield, while Sidious engaged her directly. Talzin manifested physically through Night Sister magic to protect her son. Grievous closed in as Sidious confronted her directly, impaling her with his lightsabers. Talzin sacrificed her physical existence to free Maul from Sith captivity. Her physical form disintegrated, ending the Night Sister matriarchy. Grievous withdrew with Separatist forces after the operation. The destruction of Talzin removed one of the last independent Force-using leaders capable of interfering with Sith control. Grievous resumed command of fleet and ground operations as the Clone Wars entered their final phase. Chapter 6: Siege of Coruscant. By the final year of the Clone Wars, Separatist leaders prepared an operation aimed directly at the Republic's political center. Coruscant contained the Galactic Senate, the Jedi Temple, and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. An attack on the capital would force the Republic to defend its authority under immediate threat while exposing weaknesses in its defensive network. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Separatist fleet movements were deliberately concealed through gradual redeployment. Individual warships departed active combat zones under routine orders, traveling along indirect hyperspace routes rather than assembling in obvious staging areas. These movements fell within normal wartime patterns and did not trigger immediate alarm. Grievous supervised the dispersal and convergence of these forces, ensuring fleet elements gathered beyond major surveillance corridors before moving toward their final jump points. Diversion operations reinforced the deception. Separatist fleets struck Republic supply convoys and remote outposts, forcing Jedi commanders and clone reinforcements away from the core worlds. These attacks drew Republic attention towards the Outer Rim, where the war had intensified. Coruscant retained defensive fleets, but its readiness had been shaped by months of distant campaigning rather than expectation of direct assault. As a result, Republic reinforcements remained deployed across distant sectors, while Separatist fleets prepared for the direct assault on Coruscant itself. Grievous established his command aboard the Providence-class carrier Invisible Hand, which served as the central command vessel for the invasion. Providence-class carriers functioned as fleet coordination platforms, equipped with extensive communications and starfighter control systems, allowing centralized control over large formations. Count Dooku remained aboard to oversee the political dimension of the operation, while Grievous directed its military execution. In the canon film Revenge of the Sith, he remained physically on the Invisible Hand as the fleet emerged over Coruscant. receiving continuous tactical reports from droid officers and adjusting deployments as Republic defenses mobilize. Republic intelligence detected unusual activity only moments before the assault began. The Separatist armada emerged from hyperspace directly above Coruscant. Hundreds of warships appeared simultaneously, including battleships, destroyers, and carrier vessels. Droid starfighters launched immediately, while capital ships advanced towards Republic defensive formations. Republic Venator-class Star Destroyers responded by deploying clone pilots and forming defensive lines between the Separatist fleet and the planetary surface. Fighter squadrons engaged in incoming droid formations, while capital ships exchanged heavy turboblaster fire at close range. Grievous directed fleet deployment from the Bridge of the Invisible Hand. Droid starfighters attacked Republic vessels to prevent withdrawal or regrouping. Because the starfighters were mass-produced and expendable, losses did not weaken the offensive. Replacement squadrons launched continuously, forcing Republic pilots to remain engaged and preventing defensive stabilization. Separatist capital ships advanced aggressively through Republic defensive formations rather than remaining at long range. Republic fleets were forced to remain in combat to prevent orbital bombardment or surface deployment. This orbital battle created the conditions necessary for the mission's primary objective. While fleet combat continued, Separatist landing craft descended towards Coruscant's government district. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Separatist intelligence had already identified Palpatine's location inside the Galactic Executive Building. Grievous led the ground assault personally, deploying battle droids and mechanized infantry directly into the government sector. Battle droids forced entry into the building, while Republic security forces and clone troopers attempted to establish defensive positions. Jedi stationed on Coruscant responded immediately, engaging droid units inside corridors and defensive checkpoints. Separatist units advanced through continuous reinforcement. Destroyed droids were quickly replaced by additional units arriving from orbit. Republic defenders slowed the advance, but cannot fully stop it. Grievous entered the Chancellor's office once the surrounding defenses collapsed. Droid units secured the area, while surviving defenders were neutralized or forced to retreat. Grievous seized Chancellor Palpatine alive, completing the primary objective of the invasion. Extraction began immediately as droid forces escorted the prisoner to a transport craft positioned within the city. Republic defenders attempted interception, but fleet combat overhead limited reinforcement and delayed coordinated response. The transport returned Grievous and Palpatine to the Invisible Hand, where the Chancellor was secured under guard. For the first time in the war, the Republic's political leader was in enemy custody. Republic fleets intensified their attacks to prevent Separatist withdrawal. In the canon film Revenge of the Sith, Republic starfighters targeted Separatist capital ships, while Venator-class cruisers maneuvered to isolate command vessels. Grievous maintained coordination long enough to secure the prisoner and prepare withdrawal. In Revenge of the Sith, Jedi Knights Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker launched from Coruscant aboard starfighters assigned to rescue the Chancellor. They broke through Separatist defenses and entered the combat zone surrounding the Invisible Hand. Grievous ordered defensive fighters and droid units to intercept them. Droid squadrons attempted to prevent their approach, but Kenobi and Skywalker destroyed multiple attackers and reached the flagship's hangar. Once inside the vessel, they advanced toward the detention area holding Palpatine. Grievous monitored their progress and ordered additional defensive deployments, but the Jedi continued advancing through internal corridors. Count Dooku confronted the Jedi before they could reach the Chancellor. Kenobi and Skywalker engaged Dooku in lightsaber combat inside the flagship. Dooku incapacitated Kenobi early in the duel and focused on Skywalker. The duel ended when Skywalker disarmed Dooku and killed him. Dooku's death removed the Confederacy's political leader and Darth Sidious's visible apprentice. Grievous remained aboard the flagship but did not attempt to confront the Jedi directly. His priority remained preservation of military command and withdrawal of surviving forces. Republic fleet attacks inflicted severe structural damage on the Invisible Hand. Turbo laser fire and internal explosions disable major systems. Fire spread throughout the ship, while power failures affected propulsion and life support. Grievous ordered evacuation of command personnel. Droid units remained behind to delay Republic advance, while he withdrew aboard an escape shuttle. Republic forces secured the Chancellor and evacuated the vessel. The crippled cruiser lost altitude and entered Coruscant's atmosphere, breaking apart during descent and crashing on the planet's surface. Separatist warships disengaged and entered hyperspace following the loss of the flagship and the death of Dooku. Republic forces prioritized planetary defense and recovery of the Chancellor rather than pursuit. With Dooku dead, public political leadership of the Confederacy vanished. Darth Sidious remained hidden, and no visible authority replaced him. Operational military command consolidated around Grievous. Separatist corporations still possessed fleets, factories, and droid armies, but those assets had relied on Dooku's coordination. Grievous became the figure issuing operational priorities, determining fleet redeployments, abandoning vulnerable systems, and sustaining military continuity across widely separated fronts. Separatist council members withdrew from direct exposure, communicating through encrypted holographic transmissions while relying on Grievous to execute their orders. Droid armies could continue executing programmed orders temporarily, but long-term coordination required his interpretation and control. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, the Jedi Order launched one of its largest intelligence operations of the war to locate him. Investigators traced supply movements, communication relays, and hyperspace routing patterns supporting Separatist command activity. Republic forces destroyed relay stations and disrupted command infrastructure, but Grievous and the Separatist Council avoided capture by relocating before Republic forces could complete encirclement. These investigations reveal that Separatist leadership relied on constant mobility, encrypted transmissions, and layered logistics networks to conceal their position and preserve command continuity. Republic intelligence concluded that destroying Grievous would sever the operational link connecting Separatist fleets, production centers, and political leadership. The Siege of Coruscant demonstrated the reach of Separatist military power. Grievous had brought the war directly to the Republic capital and captured its leader. Although the Confederacy lost its political commander, its military structure remained intact under his authority. Droid armies continued operating across Separatist territory, and fleet units regrouped under his command as the war entered its final phase. As expected, Republic leaders shifted their focus towards locating and eliminating Grievous. Chapter 7: Showdown in Utapau. Republic offensives intensified following the Battle of Coruscant. Jedi commanders and clone armies advanced into systems that had remained under Separatist influence earlier in the war. Republic intelligence narrowed its search towards the remaining centers of Separatist command, focusing on locating Grievous. Separatist political leaders relocated repeatedly under Sith direction to avoid Republic detection, eventually assembling on Mustafar while remaining concealed from Republic intelligence. Grievous operated separately, maintaining mobile command over the Confederacy's military forces while avoiding fixed positions that could be targeted by Republic fleets. In the canon film Revenge of the Sith, Grievous established a concealed command position on Utapau. The planet's surface consisted of massive sinkholes that descended deep below the surrounding terrain. Settlements such as Pau City existed within these formations, shielded from direct orbital observation by sheer rock walls. The terrain limited landing zones and reduced the effectiveness of sudden aerial assault, making the location suitable for concealment. Grievous stationed battle droids throughout Pau City and positioned defensive units along key access platforms. Droid patrols monitored approach routes and landing zones, maintaining continuous security presence. Separatist warships and transports used the system periodically, allowing communication to continue with Separatist command networks without establishing a permanent fleet presence that could attract Republic tension. In the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, General Grievous personally oversaw the protection and relocation of key Separatist leaders as Republic forces intensified their advance. He coordinated escort assignments, ensured secure hyperspace departure routes, and deployed droid fleets to shield evacuation movements. These actions allowed Separatist political authorities to avoid capture while continuing to direct war production and resource allocation from concealed locations. In the canon film Revenge of the Sith, holographic communications show Grievous receiving instructions from Separatist council members while they remained in hiding, confirming that political leadership depended on him to maintain military protection. Their alliance reflected his position as the Confederacy's primary defender after Count Dooku's death. While they remained concealed, Grievous preserved the military structure that allowed their authority to continue functioning despite Republic offensives closing in on Separatist territory. In time, reports reached the Jedi Council indicating Separatist activity on Utapau. Intelligence analysis identified the unusual movement patterns associated with Separatist command elements. The planet's geography and relative isolation made it suitable for secrecy, increasing the likelihood that Grievous had selected it as a temporary command location. The Jedi Council treated the intelligence as urgent, deciding that immediate reconnaissance offered the best chance of confirming the Supreme Commander's presence before he could escape again. The Jedi Council assigned Obi-Wan Kenobi to investigate. Kenobi had survived previous encounters with the Grievous and possessed first-hand experience fighting him. For support, Republic Command prepared clone forces, but confirmation of the target remained necessary before they could launch large-scale assault. Commander Cody and the 212th Attack Battalion prepared to support Kenobi once he acquired verification. Kenobi's arrival on Utapau signified the transition from intelligence pursuit to direct action against the Confederacy's Supreme Commander. Republic forces successfully reached Utapau without alerting the Separatist garrison to their presence. Obi-Wan Kenobi descended alone to confirm if Grievous was indeed hiding there before signaling clone forces who were waiting in orbit. Utapau sinkhole cities provided great cover and limited access routes, allowing Grievous to reduce the risk of a sudden combat offensive. Kenobi wrote a native Varactyl named Boga to descend into Pau City. He moved along narrow platforms and ledges, avoiding detection while observing Separatist activity. He witnessed battle droids patrolling key structures, confirming the city's active military occupation. At last, Kenobi located General Grievous near a command landing platform. The Supreme Commander was standing among battle droids, issuing orders and overseeing defensive activity. Separatist Council members communicated with him. Grievous maintained direct control of droid deployments while they remained in hiding. His active communications confirmed his continued authority over specialist military operations. Kenobi transmitted confirmation of Grievous's presence to Republic Command. Commander Cody and clone forces in orbit prepared for planetary assault, while Kenobi remained inside the city. The Republic's objective shifted from reconnaissance to elimination. General Grievous continued issuing orders, unaware that Republic forces had reached the planet. Droid patrol patterns remained unchanged, while Separatist command activity continued normally. Kenobi moved into position near Grievous's command platform and revealed himself, confronting him directly. The sudden appearance of a Jedi inside the Separatist command center confirmed that Republic forces had located him. Republic gunships descended into the sinkhole shortly after. Clone troopers deployed across Pau City, while droid forces mobilized to resist the invasion. The confrontation was the beginning of Grievous's final battle. The Supreme Commander was forced to abandon command coordination and focus on surviving a duel. Meanwhile, clone forces had begun deploying into Pau City. Grievous withdrew across Utapau's elevated platforms and exterior surfaces to create distance. Kenobi pursued him through the city, while clone troopers engaged droid defenders. Grievous engaged Kenobi using multiple captured lightsabers, attempting to overwhelm Kenobi through continuous assault. Kenobi defended against the attack and countered with success, slowly reducing Grievous's ability to maintain offensive pressure. The Supreme Commander's mechanical limbs and weapon systems were disabled during the confrontation, forcing Grievous into a close-quarters physical struggle. During the struggle, the armored plating protecting his chest opened, exposing the organic organs integrated into his cybernetic frame. Kenobi seized a fallen blaster and fired directly into the exposed cavity. Blaster fire ignited Grievous's internal systems and organic tissue. Flames spread through the interior of the cybernetic body, and General Grievous collapsed onto the platform. Clone troopers reached Kenobi's position shortly after the duel and secured the surrounding platforms. Republic forces spread through the sinkhole city, destroying remaining droid resistance and capturing defensive positions. Without Grievous present to issue orders, droid coordination degraded significantly. Tactical droids continued executing standing directives, but no commander remained capable of reorganizing battlefield operations at full scale. Republic leadership received confirmation of his death through Jedi transmission. Grievous had directed Separatist military operations across the galaxy since Count Dooku's death. Separatist leadership remained in hiding, while droid forces continued operating under automated command and political direction. No surviving commander possessed equivalent authority over Separatist military forces. General Grievous's death ended his direct role in the Clone Wars and removed the last active military leader capable of coordinating the Confederacy's mechanized war effort. Chapter 8: Legacy of the Machine. The duel site where Grievous fell remained intact, with his burned cybernetic frame lying where Kenobi had shot him. Kenobi departed Utapau soon afterward, leaving clone forces to complete the occupation of the planet and secure remaining Separatist assets. Droid resistance had collapsed without centralized command, allowing Republic forces to consolidate full control over Pau City with relative ease. Grievous's destroyed body remained in Republic-controlled territory after the battle. His chassis consisted of durasteel structural supports, mechanical limbs, and armored plating that had been built around preserved Kaleesh biological organs. The blaster fire that killed him had ignited his internal systems, leaving portions of the structure blackened and damaged. The mechanical frame no longer showed movement or function. His destruction permanently ended the life support structure that had sustained him. Droid forces elsewhere continued operating temporarily under automated command protocols, but no living commander remained to replace him. The Republic had succeeded in eliminating the military figure most responsible for directing Separatist ground and fleet warfare during the final phase of the Clone Wars. However, remaining components of General Grievous's cybernetic body did not disappear from galactic history. In Legends, Grievous's posthumous legacy continued in the MMORPG Star Wars Galaxies. One of the scientists tied to this later effort was Dr. Nikolai Kinesworthy, an Imperial cyberneticist involved in the NK project during the Galactic Civil War. Rather than attempting to restore General Grievous himself, which remained impossible without the original Kaleesh brain and nervous system that had been destroyed on Utapau, Imperial engineers worked from what his remains could still provide: structural design, surviving components, and the intimidation value of his image. Elements recovered from Grievous's chassis were studied and adapted as the basis for a new combat machine. The result was NK Necrosis, a droid whose posture, silhouette, and physical design deliberately echoed the former Supreme Commander of the Separatist Droid Armies. The resemblance was not accidental. Imperial science was trying to reproduce the terror associated with Grievous's form, creating a machine that looked like the warlord who had once cut through Jedi and clone forces during the Clone Wars. In that sense, the project treated Grievous's body as both a technological resource and a symbol. Unlike Grievous, however, NK Necrosis contained no living Kaleesh tissue. It possessed no memory of the Clone Wars, no connection to Kaiman Jai Shalal as an individual, and no preserved organic consciousness directing its actions from inside a cybernetic shell. It functioned as a weapon, not as the return of the being who had once inhabited that body. What Imperial engineers could replicate was the exterior frame and some measure of combat capability, but not the living mind that had made Grievous more than a machine. The failure of that distinction defined the project's limits. Grievous's power had always depended on more than armor plating, clawed limbs, and reinforced servo motors. His lethality came from the combination of mechanical design and the surviving warrior intelligence housed within it. The Empire could imitate the chassis and recover fragments of the engineering, but it cannot truly recreate General Grievous. What remained after Utapau, even in Legends, was not resurrection. It was an imitation built from the wreckage of a dead warlord. However, Grievous's recovered components also held symbolic importance. Canon reference sources confirm that Grievous's mask had formed part of his original Kaleesh armor before his cybernetic reconstruction. The mask preserved the outward identity he had carried throughout the Clone Wars. Its survival ensured that physical evidence of his existence had endured. Grievous had served as Supreme Commander of the Separatist Droid Armies and had become one of the most feared military figures of the Clone Wars. His body represented the physical form through which that authority had been exercised. Salvaged pieces of his armor and mechanical structure were artifacts associated with the final years of the Republic. The persistence of the Supreme Commander's mechanical remains reflected the durability of the reconstruction that had transformed Kaiman Jai Shalal into General Grievous. But despite continued interest in his technology, no canon source confirms any successful restoration of General Grievous as a living individual. His Kaleesh brain and life support systems had been destroyed during the duel on Utapau. Mechanical reconstruction alone could not restore the consciousness that created a massive influence on Separatist military operations a long time ago. Engineers could recover parts and replicate the body, but not the Kaleesh champion who occupied it. For those curious of Grievous's duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi, a breakdown of the Jedi Knight's mastery of the form Ceresu, his force-based hyper-awareness, and his survival-first philosophy explain why he was the only one who could beat the Supreme General. And if you want to explore more Count Dooku's story, an exploration of his rise and fall provides insight on his role in galactic history.